The elite halls of Crestwood Academy buzzed with energy as students filled the courtyard, their laughter ringing through the air. Thorn Ashford stood in the center, his presence commanding attention like a magnet. With a smirk on his face, he caught sight of Lucas Bennett, who walked nervously through the crowd. Lucas's old sneakers and worn backpack made him an easy target for Thorn, who thrived on the approval of his peers. "Look who decided to join us," Thorn called out, his voice dripping with mockery. "Did you come straight from the thrift store today, Lucas?" Laughter erupted around them, a cruel wave that crashed over Lucas, pulling him under. His heart sank as he felt the heat of shame wash over him. The echoes of laughter twisted like a knife in his chest. Lucas clenched his fists, fighting the urge to lash out. "Why do you always have to do this?" he managed to say, his voice barely above a whisper. Thorn's grin widened, the approval of the crowd fueling his arrogance. "Because it's so easy. You make it too easy, Bennett. This is what happens when you don't belong," he taunted, leaning in closer, delighting in Lucas's discomfort. As the laughter continued, Lucas's resolve began to crumble. He had always believed he could rise above the cruelty, that he could prove himself, despite the challenges he faced. But now, standing in front of his classmates, the weight of Thorn's words felt unbearable. Could he really rise above this? Or was he forever trapped in the shadows of someone else's pride? Feeling overwhelmed, Lucas turned away and made his way to the cafeteria, his heart heavy with the sting of humiliation. The cafeteria was a chaotic blend of chatter and clinking trays, but all he could hear was Thorn's laughter echoing in his mind. He found a lonely corner table and sat down, staring at the untouched food in front of him. "Hey, are you okay?" A voice broke through his thoughts. It was Mia, a quiet girl from his math class. She looked genuinely concerned, her eyes searching his face. Lucas forced a smile, but the heaviness in his chest didn't lift. "Yeah, just tired," he replied, hoping to dismiss her worry. Mia frowned, not convinced. "You don't look okay. Did Thorn say something again?" He sighed, knowing he couldn't hide the truth from her. "It's just, he thinks it's funny to make fun of me." Lucas's voice quivered, and he looked down at his tray, avoiding her gaze. "Don't let him get to you. He's just a bully," she said softly, trying to comfort him. "You're better than that." Lucas wanted to believe her, wanted to feel strong enough to ignore the taunts. But the truth was, every word Thorn said cut deeper than any knife. As he sat there, the laughter of his peers became a distant echo, replaced by the silent roar of his anger and shame. What could he do to change this? How could he stand up to someone like Thorn? As lunch ended, Lucas felt a flicker of determination ignite within him. Maybe he could find a way to confront Thorn, to show everyone that he wouldn't be pushed around forever. But doubt crept back in. Was he really strong enough? Could he stand against the cruelty that loomed over him? The bell rang, breaking his thoughts and signaling the end of lunch. With a deep breath, Lucas stood up, ready to face the rest of the day. But the weight of Thorn's words lingered, a reminder of the battle he had ahead. As he walked through the crowded halls, he felt the eyes of his classmates on him, some sympathetic, but most still caught up in Thorn's twisted game. Lucas couldn't shake the feeling that he was on the brink of something. What would happen if he found his voice? Would he finally be able to rise above the hurt? With each step, he knew he had to find out. Outside the walls of the elite New York school, Lucas Bennett's world was filled with the aroma of coffee and the sound of clinking dishes. He worked at a small cafe, a place that felt like a second home. Each morning, he rose early to help his mother prepare for the day. Her health had been failing, and Lucas took on more responsibilities to keep their lives afloat. As he wiped down the counter, his mind drifted to the harsh words Thorn Ashford had thrown at him just days before. "You think you can ever be one of us?" Thorn had sneered, laughter echoing in Lucas's ears. Lucas shook his head, trying to push the memory away. He focused on the steaming cups in front of him instead. "Lucas, can you grab that order for table 5?" called Jenna, the cafe manager. She was a kind woman who always believed in him. Lucas nodded, moving quickly to fulfill the request. "Sure thing, Jenna," he replied, forcing a smile. Inside, however, his heart felt heavy. He thought about his dreams of going to college, dreams that seemed so far away now. He had applied to several schools, imagining himself in a lecture hall, learning about things he loved. But the weight of his current reality pressed down on him. That evening, after the cafe closed, Lucas returned home to find his mother asleep on the couch. He tiptoed around her, careful not to wake her. The living room was dim, with only a single lamp casting a warm glow. He glanced at the stack of bills on the coffee table, a reminder of their struggles. As he settled into his small desk, Lucas pulled out his notebook. He began to write down his thoughts, pouring out his hopes and fears. "I want to go to college," he wrote. "I want to make a better life for my mom and me." But alongside his aspirations, doubt crept in. Would he ever escape this life? His pen paused when a sudden knock on the door pulled him from his thoughts. He opened it to find his neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, standing there with a warm casserole. "I made too much for dinner, dear. Thought you might like some," she said, her eyes soft with concern. "Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. That's very kind of you," Lucas replied, accepting the dish. "How's your family?" "Oh, they're doing well. Just busy with school and work, like you," she smiled. "You're doing a great job taking care of your mother, Lucas. You have a good heart." Lucas felt a flicker of warmth at her words, but the reality of his situation soon returned. He set the casserole on the kitchen counter, thinking of how he could stretch their meals for the week. As he prepared a simple dinner, he allowed himself to dream again. Maybe one day, he would be able to afford better food, a better home. The next day at school, Lucas found himself in the library, surrounded by books and the familiar smell of old paper. He was searching for scholarship applications when he stumbled upon a flyer pinned to the board. "Scholarship opportunities for local students," it read. His heart raced as he read through the details, excitement bubbling inside him for the first time since Thorne's cruel words. Just then, a familiar voice broke his concentration. "What are you doing here, Bennett?" It was Thorne, flanked by his usual group of friends. Lucas straightened his back, determined not to let fear show. "Just looking for scholarships," Lucas replied, trying to keep his tone steady. Thorne laughed, a sound that sent shivers down Lucas's spine. "Good luck with that. You really think they'll pick someone like you?" Lucas felt the sting of shame return, but he refused to back down. "Why not? Everyone deserves a chance," he said, surprising even himself with the strength of his words. Thorne's expression shifted, confusion flickering across his face. Lucas seized the moment. "You might have everything, but that doesn't make you better than anyone else." For a second, silence hung in the air. Thorne's friends glanced at each other, unsure how to react. Lucas felt a rush of courage, fueled by the scholarship flyer. He turned away, leaving Thorne staring after him, the tension lingering. Later that evening, Lucas sat at his desk again, the scholarship application before him. He felt a glimmer of hope. "Maybe this is my chance," he whispered to himself. With determination, he began to fill it out, pouring his heart into every word. The weight of his struggles felt lighter as he wrote, and for the first time in a while, he believed that a better future was possible. The school auditorium buzzed with excitement as students filled the seats, their chatter echoing off the high ceilings. Lucas Bennett stood backstage, heart racing and palms sweaty. The event was a chance for students to speak about issues that mattered to them, and Lucas had decided it was time to confront Thorne Ashford's bullying head-on. He took a deep breath and stepped into the spotlight. As Lucas approached the microphone, he could see the sea of faces staring back at him. Among them, he spotted Thorne, looking confident and smug, surrounded by a group of friends. Lucas swallowed hard, remembering the laughter that had followed him just days before. He wanted to speak, not just for himself, but for everyone who felt small because of someone else's words. "Hi everyone," Lucas began, his voice shaking slightly. "I'm Lucas Bennett, and today, I want to talk about the power of words." A hush fell over the crowd as they leaned in to listen. Lucas could feel his nerves begin to settle as he continued. Words can hurt us or lift us up. I know this from experience. I've been on the receiving end of hurtful words. They can stay with you for a long time. He glanced at Thorn, who was now looking more serious, his expression shifting from amusement to something more contemplative. Lucas pressed on, fueled by a mix of courage and vulnerability. I'm not here to blame anyone, Lucas said, his eyes scanning the audience. But I think it's important for us to understand why people say the things they do. Sometimes it comes from their own struggles. He paused, recalling the moments when he had seen glimpses of Thorn's loneliness beneath the bravado. I believe Thorn has his own battles, just like the rest of us. The crowd murmured softly, some nodding in agreement. For the first time, Lucas felt a sense of connection with the audience, as if they were all in this together. He took a step closer to the microphone, determination burning in his chest. Words can build walls between us, but they can also help us break them down, he continued. I want us all to think before we speak. Let's choose kindness over cruelty. He could see Thorn's jaw tighten, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. Lucas felt a rush of empathy for his classmate. Thorn, I know you're not just a bully, you're human, and I believe you can choose a different path. We all can. The auditorium fell silent, the weight of Lucas's words hanging heavily in the air. Lucas felt a rush of relief wash over him, knowing he had spoken his truth. He stepped back from the microphone, his heart still pounding, but a sense of pride swelling within him. As he walked off the stage, he caught Thorn's eyes again. The usual arrogance was gone, replaced by something raw and vulnerable. For the first time, Lucas saw a boy who might be just as scared as he was. Lucas, Thorn said quietly as he approached him, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know. I didn't realize how much my words affected you. Lucas felt a mix of surprise and caution. You didn't think about it before? He asked, trying to keep his emotions in check. I guess I was too caught up in myself, Thorn admitted, rubbing the back of his neck awkwardly. I'm sorry. The sincerity in Thorn's voice surprised Lucas. You have to understand. It hurts. It really does. I get that now, Thorn replied, looking genuinely remorseful. I want to do better. Lucas studied Thorn's face, searching for any hint of insincerity. All he saw was a boy who was beginning to understand the weight of his actions. It will take time, Lucas said cautiously, but it's a start. As they stood there, the auditorium filled with chatter once more, but this time it felt different. The air was charged with possibility. Lucas and Thorn, two boys from different worlds, were standing on the brink of change, each feeling the weight of the moment. The chapter closed with both boys standing in silence, the past lingering like a shadow. But for the first time, the future seemed brighter. They had taken the first step toward understanding, and perhaps, in time, towards friendship. The atmosphere at Lucas's home was heavy. The recent accident had shaken his family to its core. Lucas sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the wall. The pictures of happier times seemed to mock him now. His mother was in the hospital, and the worry gnawed at him. He felt lost, a mix of grief and anger swirling inside him. At the same moment, Thorn Ashford sat in his lavish living room, surrounded by the comforts of a wealthy life. Yet, he felt an unusual weight on his chest. He had heard about the accident involving Lucas's family. The news spread like wildfire through the school, and while he had once reveled in the attention of his peers, this time was different. Guilt washed over him. What have I done? He whispered to himself, turning his gaze to the window. The next day at school, Lucas moved through the hallways like a ghost. Faces turned away, whispers followed him, but he felt numb. He was lost in his thoughts when he bumped into someone. It was Thorn. The two boys stood there for a moment, a thick silence hanging between them. Lucas, Thorn finally said, his voice softer than usual. I'm really sorry about what happened. Lucas eyed him suspiciously. Why do you care? He replied, crossing his arms. You've made my life a living hell." "I know," Thorn admitted, his expression earnest. "I can't change what I did, but I want to help. I've been thinking about it a lot." Lucas narrowed his eyes, disbelief creeping in. "Help? You think you can just say sorry and everything will be fine? My mom is in the hospital because of everything." His voice cracked, revealing the pain he was trying to hide. Thorn swallowed hard, feeling the weight of Lucas's words. "I can't imagine what you're going through, but I want to try and make it right. I want to be better," he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. "Why now?" Lucas shot back. "After everything you've done, why would I believe you?" "Because I don't want to be that person anymore," Thorn replied, his eyes searching for understanding. "I've seen how my actions hurt people. I never thought about it before. But now, I feel like I have to change." Lucas felt a flicker of something. Could it be hope? "What do you want from me?" he asked, his voice softer now. "Just a chance," Thorn said, extending his hand. "I know it's a lot to ask, but I want to support you. I want to show you I can be different." Lucas hesitated, glancing at Thorn's outstretched hand. The boy who used to torment him stood before him, looking vulnerable. "Why should I trust you?" he asked, his heart racing. "Because I know I messed up. I can't fix the past, but I want to help if you let me," Thorn answered, his sincerity clear. After a long pause, Lucas took a deep breath. "Fine, but this doesn't mean I forgive you." "Not yet," he said, shaking Thorn's hand reluctantly. "Fair enough," Thorn replied, relief flooding through him. "I'll do whatever it takes to prove myself." As the days passed, Thorn stayed true to his word. He made small gestures to help Lucas, whether it was offering to carry his books or just sitting with him in silence. Each moment chipped away at the wall between them. Lucas couldn't deny that Thorn was changing. One afternoon, as they were walking home, Lucas finally spoke up. "Why did you really come to me? Was it guilt or something else?" Thorn hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "A bit of both, I guess. But mostly, I realized I don't want to be alone anymore. I've been surrounded by people, but I've never felt truly connected to anyone." Lucas looked at him, surprised. You always seem so confident." "That's just a mask," Thorn admitted, a shadow crossing his face. "Deep down, I've felt lost for a long time. Seeing what you're going through made me understand that I need to change." Lucas nodded slowly, pondering Thorn's honesty. Maybe change was possible, even for someone like Thorn. But could he truly forgive him? That question lingered in his mind as they walked, a silent promise hanging in the air between them. The chapter closed with both boys reflecting on their journey. Lucas's heart was heavy with uncertainty, yet a flicker of hope ignited within him. As they walked side by side, he wondered if this unexpected turn could lead to a new beginning. As the sun began to set over the New York skyline, casting a warm golden hue across the city, Thorn Ashford stood outside the cafe where Lucas Bennett worked. His heart raced with a mix of anxiety and determination. It had been a few days since the tragic accident that changed everything, and Thorn felt compelled to reach out to Lucas. He took a deep breath, trying to gather his thoughts. "Hey, Lucas," Thorn called as he stepped inside the cafe, his voice a little shaky. Lucas looked up from behind the counter, surprise evident on his face. "What do you want, Thorn?" Lucas replied, crossing his arms defensively. The hurt from their past encounters lingered between them like an unspoken barrier. I just want to talk," Thorn said, his voice softer than usual. He noticed the way Lucas's eyes narrowed, filled with skepticism. "Talk about what? About how you made my life a living hell?" Lucas shot back, his anger bubbling just below the surface. Thorn hesitated, feeling the weight of his past mistakes. "I know I was wrong. I just want to understand what you're going through. Maybe we could start fresh." Lucas raised an eyebrow, studying Thorn's face for any hint of insincerity. "You think that just because you say sorry, it changes everything? You don't get to just erase it." I know I can't erase it, Thorn said, his voice steady now. But I want to try. You deserve better than how I treated you. I want to help, if you let me. Lucas took a step back, processing Thorn's words. There was a vulnerability in Thorn's eyes that he had never seen before. Help? How can you help me? He asked, his tone softening slightly. Maybe I can help you with your scholarship application, Thorn suggested, his heart racing. I know it's important to you. I have some connections. I could talk to my dad. Lucas stared at him, disbelief etched on his face. Why would you do that? What's in it for you? Thorn sighed, running a hand through his hair. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe I just feel guilty, or maybe I just want to be a better person. I want to change. Lucas studied Thorn for a moment, weighing his options. If you're serious about this, I'll consider it. But you need to understand. Trust takes time. You broke it once, and it's not going to be easy to fix. Fair enough, Thorn replied, a hint of relief washing over him. I'll do whatever it takes. As the days turned into weeks, their tentative friendship began to take shape. Thorn visited the cafe more often, offering to help Lucas with his schoolwork. They would sit together at a small table by the window, books scattered between them, laughter occasionally breaking the tension. One afternoon, as they worked through a particularly difficult math problem, Thorn suddenly looked up. You know, I never really thought about how hard you work. I always just assumed it was easy for you. Lucas looked taken aback. You thought it was easy? You have no idea what I go through every day. I know now, Thorn admitted, leaning back in his chair. My parents expect so much from me, and sometimes I feel like I'm just a trophy for them to show off. I thought being popular was everything, but it's not. It's lonely. Lucas nodded slowly, beginning to see Thorn in a different light. I get that. My mom is sick, and I'm trying to keep everything together. It's exhausting. I'm sorry, Thorn said sincerely. I can't imagine how hard that is for you, but you're strong. I respect that. Lucas's expression softened. Thanks, Thorn. That means a lot coming from you. In that moment, something shifted between them. The walls they had built around themselves began to crumble, revealing a shared understanding of their struggles. They both carried burdens, but now they had each other to lean on. As they left the cafe that day, a sense of hope filled the air. The path to redemption was not easy, but it felt a little less daunting now that they were walking it together. They both realized that friendship was possible, and maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to navigate their pasts and create a better future. The air in the school auditorium buzzed with excitement as students gathered for the annual spring event. Banners hung from the ceiling, and the smell of popcorn filled the room. Thorn Ashford stood backstage, his heart racing. This was not just another school event for him. It was a chance to show everyone how much he had changed. He glanced at Lucas Bennett, who stood a few feet away, adjusting his tie nervously. Are you ready? Thorn asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Lucas shrugged, his eyes darting around the crowded room. I guess, just a little nervous, you know? Thorn nodded, remembering the days when he would have mocked Lucas for showing any sign of weakness. But now, he felt a sense of solidarity with him. You've got this. Just speak from the heart. As the principal called for everyone to take their seats, Thorn felt a wave of anxiety wash over him. He had worked hard to change his ways, but he still worried about what others would think. Would they accept him? Would they see him as the same Thorn they once knew? When it was finally their turn to speak, Lucas stepped up to the microphone first. His hands trembled slightly as he began. Thank you all for being here. I want to talk about change and how it's possible for anyone, no matter their past. Thorn watched as Lucas spoke. His words flowed with passion, capturing the audience's attention. I used to think that I could never rise above my situation. I felt trapped by my circumstances and the way I was treated. But then I realized that change starts within us. It starts with understanding, compassion, and the courage to forgive. The room fell silent as Lucas shared his story. He spoke of the pain he had felt, not just from Thorn's bullying, but from the weight of expectations in his life. "We all carry burdens," he continued, "but we can choose how to carry them. We can choose to lift each other up instead of tearing each other down." Thorn's heart swelled with pride as he listened to Lucas. This was the boy he had once bullied, now standing tall and strong in front of their peers. Lucas paused, looking out at the faces in the audience. "I've learned that true strength lies not in pride, but in vulnerability. It takes courage to be open, to share our struggles, and to support one another." When Lucas finished, the audience erupted into applause. Thorn felt a rush of emotions. He realized how far they had both come. It was his turn next, and he stepped up to the microphone, feeling the weight of everyone's gaze upon him. "Wow, Lucas," Thorn started, his voice cracking slightly. "I never thought I'd say this, but you've inspired me." The crowd hushed, surprised by his words. "I used to think that being tough meant showing no weakness. I thought that pride would make me strong. But I've learned that real strength is in admitting when we're wrong and reaching out to others." He took a deep breath, remembering the pain he had caused. "I hurt people to feel better about myself. I let my pride blind me. But I want to change. I want to be better. I want to be someone who lifts others up, just like Lucas did for me." The applause grew louder as Thorn spoke. He felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. "I know it will take time to earn back your trust," he continued, "but I'm committed to making things right." As Thorn stepped down from the stage, he felt a sense of relief wash over him. Lucas met him with a smile, a genuine warmth in his eyes. "You did great, Thorn. I'm proud of you." "Thanks, man," Thorn replied, his voice filled with sincerity. "I couldn't have done it without you." As the event continued, classmates approached them, congratulating both boys on their speeches. Thorn and Lucas exchanged glances, knowing they had forged a bond that was once unimaginable. Later, as the crowd began to disperse, Thorn turned to Lucas. "So, what do you think? Are we really changing?" Lucas nodded, a thoughtful expression on his face. "I think we are, and I believe we can keep changing, together." In that moment, surrounded by their peers, both boys understood that the journey ahead would not be easy. But they also knew that they were no longer alone. They had each other to lean on, to support one another through the weight of their pasts and the hope for their futures. As they left the auditorium, Thorn felt lighter than he had in years. The weight of pride had shifted, replaced by the strength found in vulnerability and the promise of true friendship. Share this story if you believe that change is possible and that true strength lies in vulnerability. Leave a comment about a time when you overcame your past and embraced a new beginning. Subscribe for more inspiring stories like this one.